Hey, what's going on, everybody? Hope you guys are all doing great. And I wanted to share this presentation. I saw this presentation just a couple days ago. I thought it was really, really good. I follow a guy by the name of Barry Habib. You may have heard of him before, but I follow him every single day, and he's right most of the time. He used to be in the mortgage business. Now he's an analyst, and he follows the mortgage market and real estate market very, very closely. So I saw this presentation. I thought I'd share it with you. If you're in the real estate game, if you're thinking about purchasing a home, or if you're a realtor and you have some buyers, you are probably hearing the conversation going into a recession. What's going to happen in the next 6 months to a year? We should probably sell now because the values might be going down, or if it's a buyer, they're probably saying, "Hey, we don't want to necessarily buy yet. We want to see what the market's going to do. We want to, we don't want to buy at the height of the market." So all those questions are floating around, and I'm getting those as well. And so right now we're seeing that very thing. The inventory has risen, where a lot of sellers are wanting to sell right now, which leads me to believe that a lot of these sellers want to try to sell before the market comes down. Well, let me get right into it. So, are we going to see a recession? That's a good question. So, a good indication of before a recession is the yield between the 10-year treasury and the 2-year treasury. So, I don't want to bore you with this, but essentially, you can see this kind of highlighted area right here, 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 and here. These are the recessions that we've had over the last since the 1980s. The one, two, three, four, five recessions since the 1980s. And so this red basically means you take the 10-year treasury minus the 2-year treasury, and that is a spread, or that's the yield. And so in the 1980s, for example, right here, that spread was a little over 1%. That basically means that the 10-year treasury was about 1% higher than the 2-year treasury. Well, when you get in the red, that's basically a negative number. And so you can see before each recession here, 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 and here, you see this 10-year treasury yield go into the red, which basically means a negative yield curve. So you can see negative yield curve recession, negative yield curve recession, negative yield curve recession, negative yield curve recession, same for this last recession, negative yield curve. And so you can actually see, move myself here, you can actually see where we're at right now. We actually just about a week ago went negative for the first time since 2007, right before our last recession. You'll see it went negative and then it went negative again. So this is a very good indicator of a potential recession coming. So another indicator of a recession is the unemployment rate. And a lot of people are thinking that the unemployment rate is going to be really high before a recession, which isn't necessarily the case. So in this graph here, you see the correlation of the unemployment rate and when we actually went into the recession. So here, this one goes all the way back to 1950. You'll see the unemployment rate right before the recession. Again, these gray areas are the recession. Right before the recession, the unemployment rate goes up just a tiny bit, then the recession hits, and then the unemployment shoots way up. Right, every single time. So this is actually 100% of the time when the unemployment shoots up just a tiny bit, and then the recession hits. The recession does not come when the unemployment rate is super high. So right now, you see right here is where we're at. So if you see the unemployment rate tick up just a little bit, that's also another indicator over the last, 60 years, 70 years, and this has been 100% of the time where the unemployment rate shoots up just a tiny bit and then we go into a recession. So this is where we're at right here. Now, this here is the 30-year interest rate over the past 50 years as it correlates to every recession. So this goes back to 1970s. So you can see the interest rates during the recession, like on this last recession that we had in 2008, interest rates during the recession went from 6% to 4.875%. The one before that, interest rates went from 7.3% to 6.7%. The recession before that went from 11% to 8.75%. That's a 2.25% reduction. The one before that went to 18 to 13%. Now these were really high interest rates, but if going from 18 to 13, that's a 5% reduction in interest rates for the 30-year fixed, which is huge. A lot of potential for buyers, a lot of potential for for refinances as well for each one of these recessions. Again, 16 to 11.75%. Let's go previous here, previous. So what you can see is every single recession, the 30-year fixed interest rate does get better. Now, I know currently we have seen interest rates get better. I think that we'll continue to see interest rates get better over the next 6 months to a year, leading into a potential recession. So what's gonna happen with home values during a recession? Well, let's look at the history. So what this is the Case-Shiller U.S. National House Price Index. So this is the National Home Appreciation Index that shows home prices as it correlates to each recession. So this one goes back to 1975. So this is where a lot of people are asking me, hey, our home value is going to go down during the recession, and what's going to happen to my home during the recession? Should I sell, or should I wait to buy during and wait the recession out? So, well, let's take a look. In 1970s, you can see during the recession home values actually ticked up a little bit. This next one, recession ticked up, recession even on this in 1980. This recession here, it was even. And you can see actually also after the recession, values have shot up. This went up, during this recession, home values went up, then shot up. This one broke even and then shot up. This one, entering the recession, exiting, home values stayed the same. This one here in 2000, the small recession, look at this. Home prices went up by a lot during this recession right here. And then you see in this last recession, if you look, when we entered the recession to where we came out, we almost broke even during this recession, but then you can see after the recession, home values increased by quite a bit. Now, this is kind of a history of, now this last recession here, yeah, home prices did go down a little bit during the recession, but this one is an anomaly from these other recessions because the mortgages that we were doing during this time were completely out of the ordinary from what you see here. The mortgage crisis is what put us into the recession. It's very not like these last recessions that we've had. And so I wouldn't really count all your eggs in this last recession, because the mortgages that we've done in the last 10 to 15 years, or sorry, the last 10 to 12 years since this last recession, have been performing very, very well. And we've been verifying all of the income. These mortgages that were done were very poorly underwritten, as you well know. And so I wouldn't really count this as a normal recession. And so I believe that that we should really kind of look at the whole picture here. So why why do the home values increase, and why does it create why home values increasing during the recession, and what's helping that? Well, what does help that is, as I mentioned before in the previous slide, is the interest rates do get better, which creates more affordability, creates more people that can afford higher priced home. And so prices do get better when interest rates go lower. And so because it creates more affordability, the payments are less. And so that is based on history why the real estate have stayed the same or gotten better during a recession, and then they shoot up by a lot after the recession. So I hope that makes sense. So the next thing that I want to show you is uh, Barry explained it like this: the Feds have beer goggles. And so what does that basically means? Well, the Fed, they don't necessarily think that we're going to see a recession. In fact, they have about a 30% of them think that we're going to go into a recession. They think that there's a 30% chance of a recession. Well, on the previous recessions, what was their outlook? What was their percentage of, if we were going to go into recession? So in 1989, before for that recession, they said there was a 15% chance that we're going to see a recession right here. The next one, they said there was a 15% chance that we were going to see a recession. The next one, they said it was a 25% chance that we're going to go into a recession. That was on the biggest recession that we've had. And right now, they're saying there's a 33% chance. That wouldn't necessarily, Barry's saying that don't necessarily go off what the Fed's saying, because in the past, they've been more than 50% incorrect. You know, they were way off here, and potentially here. And so that's why he's saying that the Feds kind of have beer goggles. Now, what you're looking at here is the 10-year Treasury, and Barry's saying this is a great chance for interest rates to continue to get better. And so this is the 10-year Treasury where we're at right now. This is the U.S. 10-year Treasury. And so you equivalent with the other countries with their same kind of 10-year Treasury that they have in their country, you can see where interest rates, we're the highest right now. And you'll see some of these other countries have negative interest rates that you've seen. And so there's a big chance that there's a big possibility there's more room for interest rates to get a lot better than there are to get worse. And you can see that there's lots of room for us to go down. Now, Barry Habib thinks that we're going to actually, be half of this fairly soon, as far as where our interest rates are going. So here's another graph that shows you the 10-year Treasury. Now, the 10-year Treasury is kind of what a lot of people will follow for the 30-year fix. Now, this is not the 30-year fixed rate, but the 10-year kind of follows the 30-year fixed pretty closely. So you can see back in the 1980s that the peak was about 16%, the low was about 10%. So the low and the peak, and then the low and the peak. And you can see ever since the 1980s, we have lower peaks and lower lows. So what that means is every single low and every single high is lower than the previous. So you can see here, this graph on the 10-year note, our last high was right here, and our last low is right here, which is, I think, 1.3%. And so you can see, 1.37%, which is the lowest it's ever been. And so what Barry's saying is that our low is going to be lower than that, and our high is going to be lower than the last high, which leads us to believe that interest rates are going to get better, which means affordability is going to get better, and also which means home values will hopefully have quite a bit of demand, which is going to create home values to appreciate. I hope this really makes sense for you guys. I hope you guys can use this when you're talking to your buyers. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you very soon.